I've been very lucky in that comedy and laughter can bridge cultural differences. I wake up, so my routine is, and it's really quite simple, and it's about balance, right? Don't waste the time you have.
Hi everyone, before you start watching this episode, I would like to request you to click on the subscribe button and join this community so that we can come up with a right content for you and make you aware about certain and different industries so that you can have more knowledge and you can share more knowledge with other people. Today I'm super excited for this episode because today's guest is a Canadian comedian, actor, director, storyteller, and now producer, Darrell Dennis, who is very well known for his strong stand for Indigenous people. We are going to ask him so many questions and we are going to know so many unknown secrets from his personal and professional life. So from there, you can learn so many things. So I'm going to write every detail in the description. Watch this full episode and I love your comments. So just share your comments in the comment box so that we can come up with the right content. Let's reinvent New You. So Darrell, you came early today. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
What did you do when you came up early?
Well, I actually, so my improv troupe, Tonto's Nephews, is doing a reunion show. It's been many years since we've ever gotten together and performed. So I went out to Oakville last night and did a little theater sports thing. And
That's the place where I reside.
That's right, exactly, yeah. So everything, all roads lead to Oakville.
I know.
Yeah, so we went out there and did a little improv show, shook the cobwebs off because it's been years, and we had a lot of fun, and looking forward to my show tomorrow.
Wow,
Yeah.
All the very best for the show.
Thank you.
Okay, so Darrell, we would like to know so many things about you.
Yeah.
There can be, some kind of unknown secrets.
Oh boy,
Probably
the unknown
people
secrets.
don't know about you.
Oh boy.
So we are going to ask you some tough questions.
Okay.
Are you
I'm
ready for it?
I am ready for it. Bring it
Great.
on.
Super. So tell me about your childhood. How was your childhood? Your parents, your siblings, and how were you there as a kid?
I was brought up by a single mother. My father left when I was about 3 years old, and we moved back with my grandmother and all my mom, my aunts. So I was raised by women, growing up. Yeah, so a big tribe of women growing up, and that was really informative for me. And that was so I had a lot of people looking out for me. But when we moved out of that place, we moved into the interior of British Columbia, and I moved back onto a reserve called Alkali Lake, where I grew up.
Okay.
And that was an interesting environment because it was sort of out of the way. It wasn't really close to a main town, so it was very much isolated, and and so it was very much us. We didn't really go to town a lot because it was kind of difficult at the time to get to town.
Yes.
And when I started going to school, I was bussed into town. We went into the white town in school.
Oh yes.
And it was there I sort of realized I guess the sort of segregation between Indigenous people and non-Indigenous people in Canada. So I learned that kind of at a very early age that that there was. That there was these differences, and so I guess I would have to say that growing up, I really felt like I should stick with my own kind, and I didn't really venture into those things that were considered at the time white, right? So one of those things was like performing. We never really, drew attention to ourselves growing up. That wasn't. A lot of our people were very shy, or we stuck to ourselves. So when I actually started in junior high taking drama lessons, that was a very unusual thing for people from my reserve to do, because we never performed in plays. We rarely ever performed it. If we did, it was usually in front of our own people. But performing for strangers was really something that wasn't quite done. So I started taking drama classes mostly because my mother. I was kind of rambunctious, and I was always kind of a class clown, and my mother thought that was taking drama classes would sort sort of knock the steam out of me, you know.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So as long as I had an avenue to not act up, but that just made it worse, you know. So I was bitten by the acting bug.
Oh.
And and I was one of the very first Indigenous people in our school to actually do the school plays and that sort of thing. Yeah.
So did you join a drama because you wanted to showcase this kind of stories in front of you, or when you joined the drama and then you thought that no, I should now showcase these stories to people?
Yeah, no, I started off, I mean, I was always sort of performing. I was always kind of always desperate for attention, you know.
Wow.
Even with my family, and you know, I was kind of a clown, you know. I was always joking around, trying to make people laugh back in my community and with my family. But so, yeah, it was really. I when I started, I wanted to be an actor, you know, and it wasn't about being an Indigenous actor. It wasn't about, you know, telling Indigenous stories. It was basically, I wanted to be an actor. I wanted to be in all the great plays, the classic plays, you know, and that sort of thing. So as, you know, I started off at a very early age being very, I guess, you know, having a naivety about, you know, what the career was going to be like.
Oh yes.
And I thought I could skate by on my, you know, my looks and my talent, but as I started getting into it professionally, I began to realize that, you know, we are very much put in boxes based on what we look like, and, you know, our race and our, you know, our color and that sort of thing. So there's a lot of that sort of stuff that affects that. So I really had to learn how to sort of bust out of that and, you know, start telling my own stories. And that's where the storytelling really began, where I wanted to tell my own stories, was just years and years of struggling through the acting industry and, you know, the film and TV business and the theater business, and really being kind of disappointed with the projects that I was being sent out for.
Yes,
yeah, so so that's kind of how I began that route. And yeah, it's been I've been very lucky in that, although it's been a roller coaster, I've had many years of, you know, being incredibly poor, and you know, some years where I've been up, and, you know, many more where I've been down. But I've always been lucky that I've always managed to find some way to make a living in the business in one way, and that's I think why I had to, you know, start writing and directing and producing and you know, doing all these other things and getting into all sorts of different venues, especially in Canada, because it's really hard to make a living here if you don't.
I know, because you started as an actor and comedian, and then you moved into, I think, storytelling, and then directing films as well, right? In the North American market, everybody knows that it is highly dominated by non-Indigenous people. How did you break into it? I mean, what was your struggle to come and have a strong point and strong stand towards it?
So I guess I was able to break in. I was actually very lucky. A lot of the business is timing. And when I first started, when I decided that this was something I wanted to do, there was this TV show called Northwood on CBC.
Which one?
It was called Northwood.
Northwood,
when the original Degrassi series went off the air, we took over their time slot. So it was also a teen soap opera. And there was a character for a young Indigenous teen boy, and he was sort of disconnected from his culture. I wasn't in real life, but this character was. But I went in, and it was one of those things where it was like, I was at home one day, and there was like this general audition call on the radio I was listening to, looking for teens of all kinds. So I you know, I'd never acted professionally. I'd only done, you know, junior high drama classes. So I went, what the heck, you know, what have I got to lose? Am I doing anything else? So I guess I called them up or whatever, and they, you know, set it up. So I came in, and you know, without any real proper representation or any experience in the film and TV business, I went in, did a few auditions, kept getting called back, and then they cast me in this role, and I was like, whoa. So like right from the beginning, although it wasn't a struggle to break in, what I thought was that, you know, the ease with which I got this role, that was going to be what my entire career was going to be like. It was just going to be, I thought, you know, once I do this one, then I'll be in movies and blah, 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 blah. And it really didn't turn out like that. So I had this main role, which I was very lucky to do. I had it for 3 years, and the great thing about that role was it was kind of ahead of its time. And it was, when I think back about it now that you mention it, that role was kind of the starting point for what I wanted to do later on in
Wow.
life, which was
So that was the first milestone for you, or
yeah,
what?
I think so, was that role, because it wasn't a typical native role where we were always talking about indigenous issues, or
Yes.
I wasn't, this character was not, living on a res in poverty, and there wasn't a lot of, trauma and that sort of thing. There was a bit, I mean, it was a pretty serious show, but the great thing about this character, Brian Potter, that I played, was that he was just a regular teen in this high school, just trying to make his way, and he had a girlfriend, and and that sort of thing. So it was like, yeah, it was this really great thing where he was just this human character who happened to be had the background of being indigenous, and
True.
so I went from that role to then really getting out into the entertainment industry and seeing all the auditions and stuff that I had to do. It was very much the opposite of that. So every audition I started going out for, there was like, I was the native kid who was like had a gas sniffing problem, or the one with the alcoholic parents who were beating me up all the time.
True.
Or the other side of that was, it was always these these what we could now call leather and feather roles, which meant that we were always in buckskin and in the 1800s, and speaking in broken English, and
Yes.
being the stoic native warrior and that sort of thing. And those roles, I really I would go out for them because this was just all that was being offered to me.
Okay.
But very early on in my career, I got really sick and tired of them, and it wasn't. I felt like those roles were not representative of myself or the people.
What you wanted to do, it was not that.
Yeah, exactly.
So was there any point where you felt that, okay, shattered and you just wanted to give up?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. Many times. But I think I think the biggest part that really turned things around for me was, there's been a few years after our series went off the air where I thought, okay, well that's fine, I'll just go on to the next thing, but
Yeah.
that didn't happen, and like I really hit a low point in my career where I just couldn't get a job,
Okay.
and I was broke again. I'd just gone from 3 years of coming straight from from living on an actual reserve to the city, and then within a short amount of time I got this role,
Yes.
and I had more money than I'd ever seen in my life, more than most people had ever on the res scene, which it wasn't a lot of money, but that shows you how poor we were, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So it was, because it's Canadian television, it wasn't like these millions of dollars or whatever. It was fine, but it was still more than I'd ever seen, and I didn't know anything about paying taxes. I didn't know anything about that, so I got hit with by Revenue Canada, and they took all my money away, cleaned up my
Ooh.
bank account, and and I just moved out on my own because I was like around 18, 19 at the time, and so I hit this really low spot, and and so there was this point where I just started, I actually ended up, and this is all in my one-man show, but I was living in Vancouver at the time, and I ended up spending a lot of time on Skid Row in on Hastings Street, and so I kind of got sucked down into that sort of life where there's a lot of like alcohol and drugs, and a lot of just really sort of but that's kind of that community. I found this indigenous community of other people who came to the city,
True.
looking for new opportunities, and just it didn't happen
Just
for them.
for a
and
surviving purpose,
exactly,
they were just
yeah.
looking for it.
Yeah, exactly, and so you congregate with people who are going through the same struggle as you, and unfortunately it's not the healthiest environment, but yeah. But I also had my other actor friends and that sort of stuff that were helping me out along the way as well too. But one of the things I did was, as I was struggling, I started writing about my experiences coming from the reserve and going to
Yes.
going to the Hastings Street area, and I didn't quite know what I wanted to do with it. But that was really where I started writing, because of the projects that I was going for, and I didn't really enjoy. I said to myself, look, okay, I'm not doing anything right now. My life is kind of it's not where I want to be. But in the spare time, I'll just start writing the sort of projects that I would have wanted to see, or the sort of projects that I would want to be in. So I started writing, and I started writing theater. I started writing plays, and one of my first plays got produced by a theater company in Toronto called Native Earth, and then I wrote my second one. So I got out of that lifestyle, that Skid Row lifestyle. I moved to Toronto, and I quit drinking and I quit all that, and I trying to get my life together. And part of the therapeutic part of me, since I had started writing, was just sort of writing my life story, and that became I didn't quite know what that was going to be. Was it going to be a book? Was it going to be? I didn't know what it was, but I turned it into a one-man show because that's what I know.
Yeah.
And that became a show called Tales of an Urban Indian.
Yeah, Tales of Urban. Yeah, that's very famous.
Yeah. So it became quite successful. It's still being performed to this day, and this was 2 decades ago I wrote that. It's gone through multiple people who have performed it, and it's gone all over the world now. So, and it's being performed. I'm coming back at the end of the month. We're doing in Barrie. They have this 750th performance reunion.
Ooh,
so
wow.
it's going to be, he's taking all the people that performed this show, and we're all going to do it in one show. So I will take a chunk of it, another person who performed it will take another chunk of it. So it's going to be so it'll be like 7 people jumping in and doing this thing. So that's going to be pretty cool. And I haven't performed it in ages. But yeah, so that. What happened was that because it was successful, it was nominated for 2 Dora Awards, and I kind of thought to myself, oh, okay, well this writing thing, which
it's going well.
Yeah, it's going well. I never started off, thinking I was going to be a writer, but because what happened was because I didn't like what I was seeing in the projects and the stuff I was going for. I said, to myself, well, you don't like it, then do something about it.
True.
So, and that's kind of been my philosophy ever since. So yeah, I started writing that, and then from there, it just people started, paying attention to me as a writer, and I started, I was given an opportunity to develop TV pilots and that sort of thing, and so even though I wasn't really acting as much as I wanted to, I was still involved in the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
But now I was the one who was creating the stories, and that was really important for me, because now I had control over the narrative of our people. I had some sort of say in what I thought.
It seems like that's your passion, that you're creating the story now.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Through your own experiences,
for
your own people's experience, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's the seed of that developed. I thought, whereas as an actor, I was kind of, I was at the mercy of whatever the producers or directors or whatever casting agents were giving me, and I was even though I wasn't passionate about it, I still had to go in there and do my best job. But as a writer, as a creator, you can now be the one who goes, this is what I want my people to be represented as. This is the sort of characters that I would want to see, on the big screen, or and I mean, which takes us to my career now, which is from the writing, I started getting into directing, and then producing. Now I'm doing producing as well too.
Wow.
And my whole philosophy, everyone has to have a mission statement in their work, and mine is to do incredibly mainstream works that happen to star and have Indigenous people in them, because that's still something that, even though we've come a long ways, it's still something that you don't really ever see. You don't see the Indigenous romantic comedy. You don't see the film that's out right now is the Great Salish Heist, and that's a heist movie with starring
that's
Indigenous
a very high
people.
stream,
Yeah, and that's incredibly mainstream. You don't see that sort of thing, and it was a comedy in the style of Ocean's 11 and that sort of thing.
Oh yeah,
so
I know.
Yeah.
So you know what? I think at the screening of the Salish Heist, somebody asked you a question as well, that are you planning to come up with a sequel of Salish Heist? And you said that yes, we are targeting as Ocean 11 kind of a thing, and everybody was so happy.
Yeah, I told them I've already got it written in my head, which I do.
Wow.
Now, if we have the opportunity to do that, I don't know, but we'll have to see.
Brilliant,
But, I mean, it's still Canadian film, so you don't do it for the millions of dollars you make, you do it because it's a passion project. So I would love to do it again. I'd love to revisit
Everybody
that.
is looking forward to the sequel of the Salish Heist, of
course. Yeah.
By Darrell Dennis, of course.
Yeah. No, it did very well, that movie. So and it's still in theaters, and soon to be coming to streaming platforms. So yeah, hopefully everybody gets a chance to see it.
Absolutely,
And if it's
yes.
successful and people watch it and they tell their friends,
Yes.
tell your friends, then yeah, maybe we'll get a sequel out of it.
110%, yes.
Yeah.
So during your struggling period,
Mm-hmm.
Who were your best supporters? Because in a life, in a personal or professional life,
Yeah.
when you have a challenging and tough time, there are always supporters who always stand by you, whatever
Yeah.
you do.
Yeah.
So who are your best supporters during that time?
I would have to say my mother obviously
Yeah.
has always stood by me, and she, even from the very beginning when I said that I wanted to be an actor, I wanted to be in the entertainment industry, she never said, why can't you get a real job? Why don't you get something to fall back on? She always supported me. And even when, all my money was taken away and, it didn't look like I had any hope for the future, she was always sort of like, well, you take it one day at a time, and you'll see. So she's always been amazing in that regard. And she's always very proud of me, and she's very supportive. But I was also lucky. The Indigenous community has been very supportive of me, and especially I've always. Ever since leaving the reserve, I've always, I've lived in a bunch of different cities. I've lived in, now Vancouver, Toronto, Los Angeles, New York, and wherever these big cities or towns are, so I always gravitate towards the Native community in those cities.
Right.
Yeah, and I've always kind of just been drawn to and hung around with Indigenous people, and I find that those little groups of people that I've kind of been incredibly supportive of my work as well too. So I've been very lucky to be around other Indigenous artists, and we all sort of know the struggle. We're all sort of fighting for the same thing, which is recognition in a positive way of our work, and getting that. So it's whether I'm a filmmaker, I've some of my best friends have been visual artists and musicians and that sort of thing, and and so it's always been like the Indigenous community that I've always felt the most comfortable with, and I found have really been the ones who have propped me up and helped me out when I've gone down another bad road as well too. So yeah, I find that that's really it's really nice. So it's like you hear a lot of stories of people the crabs in the bucket sort of thing in any community, right? But I've been very lucky that that has not been my experience with the people I've been.
And you have usually put comedy as a tool in your stories, right?
Yeah.
So as a kid, were you so comedy person?
I thought I was really funny.
So by nature also you are a very comedy person? You like to have fun, and your sense of humor is like...
Yeah, I think, like I said, I was the son of a single mother, and I grew up, there was a very large, family, all the sisters there. So I think from a very early age, I was... one of the things I gained acceptance was making people laugh. I learned as a very early age that if I could entertain them, I would get and that all. Most people that are involved in comedy, it seems like a really sort of lifestyle where confident people do it, but it's quite the opposite. When you're in the comedy, you'll find that a lot of comedians are actually very insecure, and they find. They find their acceptance, and they find what they need by making complete strangers laugh. It's kind of a strange thing where that's how you gain your self-respect. So I think like if you put it that way, I always found that if I could make people laugh, then they would be drawn to me. And also it was also a really good method for me when I was living on the reserve and being bussed into town, to sort of break through some of that racial division that we had. I would try to make people laugh, and that's sort of, I found that comedy, especially at a very early age, I learned that comedy and laughter can bridge cultural differences. I find that it's one of the most powerful techniques to be able to bring people of all types together. If you're laughing at the same thing, then it doesn't matter, what political side you're on, or racial division there is,
Agreed,
so comedy, so it's a very powerful tool, and I think a lot of people don't, give it enough, respect for being as powerful as that. So so from a very early age, I was always involved in comedy. I started, I was. A lot of the earlier shows that I wrote in high school were kind of comedic. I was always drawn to that. And then when I moved to Toronto, I I started taking classes at the famous Second City, and they were offering a scholarship programs for people of color because they knew that they had a problem at the Second City where it was a very white building, and there hasn't been a lot of people of color in there. So I got a scholarship to do that, went through all the programs, and I was actually, I think I am the very first Indigenous person to be in the cast of any of their Second City shows.
Oh, really?
So that that includes Chicago, then calls Los Angeles, Toronto. So and I checked out with the headquarters in Chicago, and they were like, "Yeah, I think you might be too." So I kind of have that distinction, which I'm kind of very proud of. But at the same time, it's sort of like, why was I the first one? The Second City started in the 1950s.
Exactly,
and for
it's
that
a
whole
huge time.
Yeah.
Why? So till that time, they did not take anyone?
They just, I don't know. And here's the other thing too, when you have these spaces that you don't see yourself represented on those stages, I would imagine a lot of Native people would probably go to these shows and, not think of themselves on that stage, And, we talk about, a lot of people talk about how, they're throwing in all these people of color and it's not necessary, blah, blah, blah. And, there's a lot of backlash about that. But like representation really does matter.
It does matter, yes.
Yeah, and since, I rarely saw any Indigenous people in the comedy world growing up. There was Charlie Hill growing up, and but very few stand-up comedians or comedic actors growing up. And so why would I think that I would have a chance at doing that?
Exactly.
So when that happened, that was very exciting for me. And from there, I just started doing stand-up comedy. I was in the Just for Laughs Festival, Winnipeg Comedy Festival, and it just it was one of those things where I felt most passionate about. I've written drama, I've performed in drama, but I find that the thing that really excites me the most is doing comedy. And
doing comedy,
That's the thing that I think I'm better at it than I am with all the other.
And you probably
genres.
enjoy doing it.
Yeah, I do. But here's the other thing too, is that it's not so weird for Indigenous people to be funny, because we are actually very, very funny people in our communities. Like laughter, we're always laughing. You go to any Indigenous gathering, community, family, even in like the darkest moments, Indigenous people, you'll always see them laughing and cracking jokes and that sort of thing. But that is another thing that is never represented in film and TV or in theater. Whenever you see Native people, it's always stoic and serious, or or trauma and poverty and that sort of thing. When in actuality, even in our darkest times, we are constantly laughing and joking. And so that was another one of those things that was just, that representation of Indigenous people was completely false. So for me, it's kind of impossible to write about my people without having comedy in it, because that is just the reality of our community and our culture and that sort of thing.
That's
true. We're always laughing.
So while directing films, you always keep in mind that there has to be a comedy. Is this your baseline or what?
Well, like I said, I think comedy comes from, a very serious place, and if I dig down into it, and a lot of it is, there's a lot of people who have sort of, investigated and done like deep essays about why something is funny and that sort of thing. But when you think about comedy is very much, people struggling to get out of a dark space, or that sort of thing. Some of the funny slapstick is people just trying to achieve a task and they can't do it. A lot of comedy is trying to do something and not being able and getting pushback on it.
True.
So when you think about it, it's very basest form. Comedy is very tragic.
Very tragic, yeah.
Yeah. So,
and it is very difficult to make someone laugh at a very right spot.
Yeah.
Because there are people who just think that, okay, I will speak this and these people will laugh. That doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is the thing too. Is I found living in I kind of go back and forth a lot between Canada and the U.S. right now. But so one of my other homes right now, or the place I live, is Los Angeles, and there comedy is comedy to some extent, but there are even some cultural differences just between Canada and the United States, where there's stuff that a lot of people would laugh at in Canada, and you go to this U.S. and they're like, I don't get what he's talking about, or that's sort of a different sensibility. So I find that very interesting too, that
Very interesting,
those
yeah.
people that are able to cross over into any sort of different culture and break through that with their company is very impressive, and it's not easy to do. But yeah, I mean, so that's the thing, is like a lot of my scripts that I write now, even the dramas will have comedy, because that is the actual reality of
true.
life. When you're at your darkest point, usually you're looking for something to laugh at, and you're looking for some sort of light. So you can't have drama in life without those moments of levity. So
That's
I think
true,
it's
that's
just, for me, it's not so much about this is something I have to do. It's something that I can't write without some form of comedy in it, without some, something in it, because it feels unnatural to me if I don't have that.
Oh, that's right. That's
Yeah.
correct. So in this entertainment industry in North America, what has been your biggest challenge in getting a project?
Yeah.
I mean, getting a fund, or
yeah.
some projects they are not approving
Yeah.
for any reason. So what has been your biggest challenge?
So for Indigenous projects, which I still mainly work in, because that is what I
Yes.
want to do, is try to make our projects more mainstream. The biggest problem has been that even though Native people have been in the entertainment industry or film and TV industry since the film and TV industry started, right? One of the very first movies ever made was about Indigenous people. But in that whole entire time that we've been in the industry, we still do not have any what you call A-list talent, right? Which means, somebody, a movie star or or a director or even a producer who can just greenlight a film or a TV series, just
Main character.
yeah, where
Lead.
it's just based on their name. So like, we don't have a Brad Pitt or a Robert De Niro or a Steven Spielberg where you just put their name on the poster and people go, oh, I want to go see that.
Yes.
We don't have that. So that's been one of those problems where, because I want to do Indigenous projects, you go to the big studios, especially in America, and they'll be like, well, we need a star. And that's just the reality of the business, I mean, you can't be upset about that, because it's been like that since the
Yes,
beginning of time.
exactly.
Money
That's the
talks,
system,
right?
yeah.
Yeah, that's the system. So, in the absence of anybody who's has that star power to be able to greenlight a film just based on their name, and then it's been trouble getting funding, and you really got to sort of think of ways to approach people with a film idea and go, the reason why you want to make this is for this reason, which may not be financial,
Absolutely,
And
yeah,
that's a
true.
very tough
It's a business,
pitch.
of course.
It's
for
a
them.
business, yeah. Which is why it's so great that Canada has this government funding opportunities for Indigenous filmmakers. And
That's
I think
really a
it's
good thing
it
that
is,
they do provide this kind of a funding, yeah.
Yeah, and it's good because you would get films that you normally wouldn't get to see. But I think what's even more important for people who aren't even in the industry is that what that does is it makes Canada, it brings Canada, into the eyes of the world, and it helps people to realize that, our culture and,
Yes.
and the different stories that people tell, and that gets out into the world, and it gets people, it makes it more international. Whereas,
Yes,
a lot of people,
absolutely.
I've traveled all over the world, and I talk about Canada, and people there still think it's a place you go where it's snow, 12 months out of the year, and people live in igloos still, and they just don't really have a serious
Yeah,
idea
to
of
become
Canada.
Eskimo.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't have a very serious idea of Canada, as
True,
much as
yes.
we know, we're in Toronto right now, which is an incredibly amazing, diverse city. And
Amazing.
Yeah,
I
love the city.
completely agree with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you go a lot of places around the world, and I travel the world, and they're like, they think we get everywhere by dog sled and stuff still, So I think it's really important that when you fund these films, these are the things that go out into the world, right? These
Yes.
are the things that are shown in like Scandinavian countries, or
Yes.
like on the continent of Africa or
Very
India,
true.
or these are the images that people will now see of Canada.
Absolutely. Making
Yeah.
people aware about certain things. Yeah. of course.
Exactly. And I think it's always very fascinating to me when I see movies from other countries, because then I get an incredibly interesting insight into their culture, and a lot of times it makes me go, I want to go see that place based on that movie I saw, and I think it's really important for people to also have that in Canada. So when people ask, why are we funding these movies in Canada that rarely ever make any money? Well, it's not really about that. It's important on other levels that, a lot of people, especially living in in America, where they kind of don't get that.
Yes.
I think there was a quote, whether it's true or not, but the quote goes that Winston Churchill during World War II was said by one of his cabinet members. They said, to fund this war effort, we have to cut out the arts. And Churchill said something along the lines of, well then, my dear, why are we fighting at all then if we're going to cut the arts? So it's really important. It really is important, and it's the arts are a representative of our countries and what we do. So that's why I think it's really important. But anyway, back to your question. That has been one of the biggest problems is trying to convince people in other countries besides Canada the importance of having these stories when we make up such a small portion of the population. So that's been one of the biggest problems. But yeah, I think it's definitely getting better from when I first started.
But it's a long journey. Like it's been so many years. So definitely it's going to be better since that time. But it is still at the point where it has to be.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too is we have made incredible progress, but now the entire world is cutting back. We don't have the finances, we don't have the money to invest in the arts anymore, and that's unfortunately happening all over the world. Where governments are having to slash budgets, and that we're seeing that now happening in Canada with our public broadcasters on TV, our film funders. It's getting the competition is tight, and it's getting less and less. So I unfortunately feel like it's going to be a lot harder to get those films that I'm making made, just because it's going to be the bottom line, or I think a lot of it is going to streaming networks now and the internet and that sort of thing. So it's going to be more about like how many views you get, or how many likes and how many clicks you can get for things like that. So which if that's the way of the world, then you got to jump on board that too and try to if you want to do some.
It's a big change actually.
But it's like everybody, when TV first came around, everyone thought that was going to be a fad, and they didn't have to worry about that, So, it's either jump on board or get left behind, So that's been kind of hard for somebody who's getting up there in age and is kind of set in his ways to sort of think about the internet and streamers and that sort of thing, as opposed to making a movie and putting it on the big screen and people come and eat popcorn and stuff. It's like, the world's changing.
It's slowly fading away, right? It's slowly fading away about it, because now a lot of people are just going on this OTT platform.
Well, that's the thing, especially for filmmakers like myself, is it's horrifying, because you put so much thought into your shots and the dimensions of how it's going to look like on a screen. And the majority of people, I've had other filmmakers say this, and majority of people say, well, when they watch your movie, they're watching it on a screen this big,
I know,
right?
I know.
It
doesn't make sense. I never feel, kind of a satisfaction watching on this thing. There's nothing better than watching a movie in a big screen, on a big screen in a theater. That's the satisfaction.
But the new generation is that's what they're used to, right?
Exactly.
So it's like they're just as fine watching the next Fast and Furious movie on an IMAX screen or on their phone.
Or on the phone,
because that's what they're used to. So,
and because of that, their attention span is also going so lower, Within 30 seconds, within 1 minute, they just want to finish everything. Whenever they time, they just watch it.
So that's something I've also had to wrap my head around when I start thinking about, what am I going to do for the next 20 years, how am I going to be able to finance these projects of mine? And a lot of it I'm thinking in terms of, stuff on the internet in 5-minute bites, here and there, so that's fine. I mean, it is what it is. I just like making the projects, and I love to I love to get it out there and, maybe change people's minds and have
Yeah, very
people
true.
have a different perspective of, what Indigenous people look like and sound like and what they are capable of doing. So whatever the venue is that has to happen, then that's fine by me. I'll adjust. I'll adjust or get left behind. You have to.
You'll adjust, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to accommodate anywhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true.
I mean, just to keep harping on this, but just think about this like a podcast.
Yes.
Is when they first started. I remember when they first started, people were like, "You're doing what?" So it's like a radio show, but it's not a radio, and you're going to film it too, and it's like it was like mind-boggling for people not that long ago, and now it's like everybody and their dog is a podcast.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
That's so time changes too
Yeah.
fast, and we need to adapt with that. Yeah, that's so true. Darrell, tell me one thing about your routine. How is your routine?
My routine?
Yeah, your day routine.
Oh, okay. I wasn't expecting that. That's great. Try to think of the non-gross things I do. I wake up. So my routine is actually
Not fixed.
No, it is actually. I come to think of it now. Then I think about it. I've actually got some habits that I do every single day, which is I wake up. The very first thing I do is I make my coffee. I do it in order too. I have my coffee, and then I make my dog's food, and then I put my toast in, and I have peanut butter, 2 pieces of peanut butter toast every single morning, and a coffee. Yeah,
wow.
And that never changes, no matter where. Like sometimes when I'm out and I don't have that, but that's kind of my
Otherwise,
daily routine.
you make sure that you have that.
Yeah.
Right?
And
Wherever
it's
you
that
go.
same order. Now I think about that every morning, and then and then I'll try to do some exercise every morning, and then I'll go into my office and and then I go through all my banking first.
Oh, yes,
that's my
banking
routine.
first, yeah.
And then after that, it's kind of because my life is so crazy. I don't know where I'm going from week to week because I am self-employed and in the entertainment industry. It's really hard to get a routine.
Yes.
So I kind of think that that's why I'm so adamant about having that routine in the morning, because my mornings are actually pretty important to me. I like to get up. I like the quiet, to collect myself, get my thoughts in order, what I'm going to do. I like it to be quiet and serene and sort of not have to think about that. So I guess that's kind of, and then once that morning is over, then I can go into the chaos of what my day is every day.
Whatever, because mornings, of course, that keeps you going for the full day.
Absolutely, and if I find that if I don't get myself set out, properly in the morning, then the rest of the day can be kind of like grumpy or whatever.
Very true. Yes. What is that one thing which you will never give up? Be it you are home or you are traveling, you are not going to miss that through your routine. So for example, as you said, that your morning is very important, that you are doing these things. Even if you are traveling, you will make sure that you have this kind of a thing. So what is the one thing which you never want to avoid?
Right. Coffee is very important to me.
Yes.
And it's actually, there have been mornings where it's like, it's dangerous for me to drive in the morning without having coffee first.
Yes.
And unfortunately, over the years, I started drinking coffee at a very young age. I think I was like 12 or 13 when I started drinking coffee, and unfortunately, that's my last sort of big vice that I have that that I haven't give up. So it's like, and I have been in a lot of different countries where coffee is not really a part of the routine. So I've had to like go out and
where would I get my coffee?
Yeah, where is coffee? Where does anybody know? And sometimes there's language differences and stuff.
That's true.
So that's one of the things that's really important to me is starting off with my first.
Do you usually get a free time during a day or in your 24 hours? Do you usually get a free time, or you're always kind of a busy person and in a thinking mode?
Yeah, I'm usually thinking all the time. My head is always going. So I could, because like I said, I am self-employed. I run my own business and that sort of thing. I could take as much time off as I wanted.
Yeah.
But I can't because, first of all, I can't because I need money to live.
True, yeah.
But also because, like you said, my head is always going. I'm always writing something in my head. I'm always creating projects in my head.
True.
When I walk down the street, I'll see something and I'll go, oh, that would make a great movie. I got to remember that and that sort of thing. So yeah, unfortunately, my head is sort of like that. I'm always creating, and it takes a while sometimes. It'll just flop around in my head for quite a while, and then I'll finally actually put it down on paper. I'm writing a movie right now that has been, bouncing around in my head for over 20 years and stuff, and I'm only now just finally getting to the point of starting to write it out.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's like, I can't really take a vacation from what I do, because what I do is so much a part of who I am and what, you know, and what I love. So and I think, you know, I was talking with my friends last night about what would you do if you so-called retired, and I say I would probably still do the same thing I'm doing. Because this is enjoyable for me. And not only that, but it's actually it's kind of like breathing for me. I have to create things, or else I'll feel like I've wasted my life, you know, or just that, you know, I feel it's important. I need to get these stories out now, and I think when you're a storyteller, you know, that's what you do. You have to get the stories out, you know. So that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
So apart from writing or whatever your work is, like storytelling, your creative ideas, it comes in the writing. But apart from that, if you have a free time, what do you prefer to do? What are your hobbies? Like, do you like to play any sports? You like reading?
Oh yeah. I love running. I love hiking. I love being out in the outdoors. I've always been sort of not really. It's funny because, you know, as a filmmaker, you are constantly working within teams, you know. But I was never really into team sports. I've played them, you know. I did you know, soccer when I was a kid. I played a bit of rugby in high school and did some basketball. But I've mostly been track and field. I love that. I love that time by yourself to really. And again, that's big. I get to be alone with my thoughts, so maybe that's the thing, and still get exercise. So I've always been a big runner. I've been into track and field, and this year I actually ran, at the beginning of the year, I ran my very first full marathon after all these years.
Oh wow!
So I took that.
How was the experience?
It was amazing, because it was one of those things, you know, I gotta say, I've done so many things that I never thought I could ever have done in my life. And like a full marathon is one of those things where I just thought, you know, I've always been a runner, but that's a marathon. I could never do that. And then I just, you know, well, what the heck? I mean, I'm not trying to be competitive. I'm not, as I joked around, I'm not trying to beat the Kenyans, you know. They're gonna do it. So I'm just, you know, I just want to do it because I want to do it, because because it's hard, you know, and it's because I'm always trying to now challenge myself to do things that, you know, scare me or that I think are impossible, if it's something I feel passionate about. So so that was really quite an experience, and it was really the last 5 miles of that.
Was the toughest one, or what?
Oh, yeah, it was so brutal, and that's when I started getting cranky. Because I was running with a friend of mine, and he was like, we were pretty much, you know, running, but he's in much better shape than me. So he's like, "Hey, Darrell, let's pick up the pace," and I just wanted to kill him. Like,
don't speak anything. I'm just walking and now running. Don't speak anything.
But he was right. I mean, and again, like if he wasn't pushing me, then who knows what you know. Maybe I would have started walking or whatever. But so it was fine. It was like I got it under 6 hours or something, you know. So it wasn't, you know, I wasn't breaking any world records, but for me it was one of those things where
finishing itself is an award winning for us.
Yeah, and it was one of those things I never ever thought I could do. So that's great, and I want to keep doing more of that sort of stuff, you know, thinking things I never thought I could do, just do it, you know. So
impressive.
Yeah, I was very proud of myself for that. The great thing about it was, my favorite part of that was this thing they call the carb load, which means that you have to be, the night before, you got to eat. Apparently, you got to eat a lot of carbohydrates. You know, there's a lot of pasta and that sort of thing before, because that keeps you going. So what happened was, I did that. I loaded up, and then I ran my marathon.
Wow.
But unfortunately, after the marathon, I kind of stopped running, but kept eating all the carbs.
Are you a foodie person? Do you like to try variety of dishes? Which is your favorite cuisine?
Well, living in Los Angeles, Mexican is very good. I love Indian food. I love, I think pasta is one of my.
Same here. Yeah. Mine too. I do like Italian cuisine.
And it's so rough if I'm not running, because it just loads me up. So that's the problem. Is I think the thing. I love breads. I love, you know, pastas. I love these things, and I think it's one of the things that I probably should not be loving as much as I do. So that's
amazing. Tell me, when did you meet your wife?
When did I meet my wife? I actually met my wife in Vancouver years and years and years ago. It's kind of a fun story. We were actually the very first professional, not professional, outside of high school, the very first acting class that either of us took outside of house that you actually have to pay and do. We were in the same class together.
Wow.
Yeah, and this was like way years and years and years ago, and so we met there, and we were just acquaintances at the time. She had her life, I had my life, and so we knew each other, and every once in a while we'd see each other at an audition or whatever, and it would be sort of like, oh hey, we know you. Right. And then she had her life, and I had mine, and I went away and moved to Toronto. I got married and moved to Toronto.
Yeah.
I went to Toronto and then got married, and then and her separately. She also had her life and moved to Toronto as well too. And I saw her at another audition in Toronto, like years and years later, and it was like, oh hey, how are you? Wow, you're here in Toronto? Oh yeah, cool. So it's again acquaintances. But one of the funny things is we went to a commercial audition, and we were paired up to be a couple in this Tim Hortons commercial. Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, and it was sort of that was kind of funny. And we were we were acquaintances, so it wasn't a big deal. So we did the audition, and never saw each, and didn't get it, and went our separate ways again. So I'd see her every once in a while, and then years went on, and I got my wife and I divorced.
Okay.
And kind of shortly after that, we ended up in this what's called a loop group. It's like a audio recording. So when movies are made, the background actors aren't allowed to speak, right?
Oh, yes.
So that the main dialogue can be heard. And what happens afterwards is that you go into a studio, and then there's a bunch of actors who fill in. They make up stuff on the spot. It's kind of improvisational to fill in voices for the background actors, so it doesn't sound like.
Okay.
So when you watch the movie, you don't see a bunch of actors going, or background actors going. So we've been doing that for a while separately, and so we did this production, and it was like, God, it was something like decade, maybe 10, 15 years after we first met, and then we kind of went into the studio, and it was after I got divorced and she was single, and we just sort of looked at each other, and it was like this. Well, this is weird. Yeah, it was like weird. I've never sort of looked at you like that. It was the same sort of thing. So I asked her for her number, and I asked for her number, but I was also doing a play in Providence, Rhode Island. So I said, hey, why don't you give me your number? She goes, okay, yeah. So, I'll call you in like 2 months. And she's like, what? 2 months? It's like, this guy's got some nerve.
I wanted to meet you today. Why 2 months?
Yeah. So it was kind of obnoxious of me, but I guess, I mean, then we just sort of, we were emailing while I was gone, and we came back and we went on a date, and we've been together ever since. So it was kind of this really neat thing where, you're
Brilliant.
Not just even really friends, but just acquaintances.
Wow.
And then all of a sudden it's like, 10, 15, 20 years, can't remember what it was, but later, and it's just like, whoa, what, this is new, this is interesting. And we've been married now for since 2007, and we're great partners. We write together, we create things, and we've actually gone to meetings in Los Angeles with studio heads together as a writing team.
Wow,
and they're
interesting.
and they're like,
she also writes?
Oh yeah, she also writes a lot of the scripts. That we do, we write together in a lot of pilots, and we go to these interviews in LA, and they're like blown away that we are a husband and wife writing team, and we haven't killed each other yet, because it's so unusual for people to like, wow, and you guys are still and you're still married, and it's like, and we work really well together, and we have a really good time. So it's great. It's nice to find somebody who's not just your partner, but who's like your best friend as well too.
Yes.
So that's really
very
cool.
true.
Yeah. So we have a great, the marriage is great.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So when you start writing, Darrell, do you write your own experiences or other people's own experiences which you have seen, or you just visualize certain things? And because I know writing is kind of a very creative thing.
Yeah.
You have to think a lot about writing a script in a film, right?
Yeah.
So, or everything is like mix some of the incidents, and then you actually, put it in the detail and in the structure way.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I pretty much everything I write at some point, there is some element of me and my life in it. And I think, yeah, I mean, even if it's like a science fiction sort of thing, you kind of got to approach everything from personal space. Even if you don't really have experience in that world, you do have to come from a realistic spot. So, so for example, the the Great Salish Heist, which is a heist film. I've never done a heist, but there are elements of the main character that were me, and there were elements of all the characters and that were part of my personality that I put into the script. From the young girl to the oldest guy. There's always some part of me that's in all these characters or scenarios or things that I've experienced. The newest movie I have coming out, which should be coming out fairly soon. Actually, we're almost finished post-production on that. So hopefully by the end of this year or the beginning of next, it's called Sweet Summer Powwow, and that is it's an Indigenous romance.
Okay.
It takes place. It's this young, these young. Romantic partners, and it takes place on the powwow circuit, and that's sort of based on my experiences, as 13, 14, a young teen who used to travel around and go to the different powwows all over BC, and sort of the romances that happen, the innocent sort of flirtations and the boyfriends and girlfriends that people get, and it's like you get something and you like hold hands and it's a big, they're your whole life. So it's like, so it's like this really, and I'd never really seen a movie, but so I thought that was a really sort of pure and beautiful time in my life, and I thought it was really sweet. So I wrote a movie that, but my wife and I did that.
See if we can demonstrate that to
people.
Yeah,
and it's just a really sweet romance, and of course it's a movie, so like the kids, it's kind of like a Romeo and Juliet for for Native kids, and it's like it's a really sweet romantic movie, and we don't really ever get to see that. Usually when you have like teen Indigenous people in movies, there's some sort of trauma, and someone gets, violence and that sort of thing, and it's not that. It's just like a really sweet romance. So I hope people can appreciate that. But the point of that is that, a lot of that was taken from my experiences in my life.
Yes,
and so because it was real for me, hopefully it'll be real for other people as well too.
And do you read books or not?
I haven't read, sat down and read a novel in a very long time, just because I'm so busy writing that it's hard for me to read.
Yes, that's true.
And I do, and I have this whole bookshelf of books that people give me or that I bought for myself. They say I want to get to that, and I'm kind of feeling the need, as the days tick by, to read them all. Things. So I'd love to get back. Maybe that's we were talking about. What do I do when I go on vacation? I think I should just take a week or a couple of weeks and just go somewhere and just read. I think that would be nice.
You like beaches or mountains? So when you go on a vacation,
I'm a
what
beach
kind
guy.
of beach guy? Oh, great!
Yeah, I love beach. I love the water. I love being by the water. I guess.
Amazing.
I feel it's very soothing.
Very soothing. It makes you so calm. Even if you hear the sound of those waves, you feel refreshed and so calm. That's so good.
I always do, and no matter where I've lived, there have always been, especially in cities, it's always been important for me to go to a source of water and just sit by it every once in a while, so you're going nuts, right? I mean, I remember living in New York.
That's true.
If it wasn't for Central Park, people would go nuts in that city, more so than they already do. But,
Very true.
But there were a lot of times when I just had to, walk down to, the harbor, and even just, even though it's crazy at the harbor, just look out over the water. It's always just hear the lapping of the water. And I think it's something like our body is something like 75% water. So that makes sense. Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Who is your role model in your life?
My role model.
I know you are going to become a role model for other people because people perceive you that way.
That's such a weird. That's so weird for me. Gosh, I don't know. I mean, I guess here's the thing, is that I've been very lucky to be able to work with so many of the people that I admired growing up. I mean, like a lot of, here's the great thing. I mean, like the last two movies I've done, I've been able to work with, and actually I did a TV pilot as well too with Graham Greene, right? So he's been a part of a lot of my projects. Like he's been in a lot of my projects. I've been working with him a lot. But I remember when I was like starting off in the industry, you know, he was the man, right? Because he was nominated for an Academy Award for Dances with Wolves, and he was like the main guy. And I was sort of like, oh man, I kind of want to have a career like him, because even though he does the Western ones, he's also in like Die Hard, you know, where he just plays a cop, and he's just, or in these other movies, and I really admired that part. And he was funny in these, you know, so it was kind of so not only did I admire him because I thought he was a great actor, you know, I thought, you know, every movie he was in, he kind of stole the movie away from the, you know, I mean, so I was kind of always admired him. So it's great, like, you know, decades later to actually be now directing him in movies is kind of this great thing. And another man who I'd really always admired for the same reasons was Wes Studi. And now this next movie, another movie that I'm doing, my next movie. I have like 5 different next movies that are coming.
Nice. Can you tell me what are your upcoming
projects?
Yeah.
Well, this is one. So I'm actually writing a movie, and Graham Greene and Wes Studi have already been attached to it, and it's kind of like an odd couple. An odd couple, an indigenous odd couple. So it's those two, you know, and it's a really funny, flat out comedy that those guys get to do. And they jumped on the chance, because here again, even legends like these guys, they rarely get a chance to just go out and, you know, be funny, right? You know, as you know, and they're both incredibly talented comedic actors.
Super.
So it's like, they jumped at the chance. So I'm writing that script, and hopefully we'll start shooting that by next year. But it's people like that. I mean, like Tantu Cardinal and all these people that I've really admired growing up, is I've had the opportunity now to, in some way, you know, work in movies with them. So it's been kind of exciting for me that it goes kind of full circle. And you say, you know, being a role model, I have a very tough time seeing myself in that position. But yeah, I've been, you know, on sets where people go like, oh man, I used to watch you in this. This is so exciting. I'm like, really? It's exciting? I'm not, you know, but then, it's the same sort of thing when I get to perform be in stuff with, you know, Graham and Wes and like Tantu and, you know, all these people that I admired growing up. But I guess, you know, on a personal level, I guess I'd have to say my mother is somebody I really admire too. Just because, you know, I mean, you're supposed to say that because she's a mom, but she really has, what my mother did, this is a great thing. My mother, when she was, you know, she was a single mom, she kind of struggled her whole life to raise me, and she was really good at that. And it was, you know, we grew up poor and that sort of thing, but she, you know, she never, you know, really complained. She just did what she had to do, and you know, and so when she was 50, or when she was about to turn 50, she said that she wanted to like dive the coral reef in like Australia or whatever that is. And I was like, what, you dive? You don't dive. And she goes, yeah, I just want to do it. Yeah, it's like, okay. So she took diving lessons, and you know, and then went on her 50th birthday.
That's so inspiring, honestly. Yeah.
And so on her 50th birthday, she was in Australia diving the coral reef. And then, not on top of that, her diving instructor, the one who was diving, she ended up in a relationship with him, so she got that man as well too. So here she is.
That's even inspiring.
Yeah. So it's inspiring. And now she's like, she's in her 70s now, and she's like driving motorcycles around like Vancouver Island, and she's doing dragon boat races, and she's retired, and she's loving her life. She, you know, so she's just, you know, she's an inspirational to me that way.
I so want to meet your mother, honestly.
She's fantastic. She's hilarious. Yeah, she's you know, and she has this wonderment of the world. Like she'll go to places, she'll be, everything is so neat, and like she's like, everything is so cool. So that's really she's kind of inspirational, because she's like, you know, she's in her 70s, she's living her best life, and she's really enjoying her life. And so that's kind of what I aspire to do, you know.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very nice.
And for a life where I was so stressed out about everything, you know, and now I kind of look at my mom and go, you know what? No, that's the way to live right there.
That's the way to live,
Yeah, so she's like, she hasn't slowed down. She's in her 70s, and she's, you know, she's having a great time, and so that's kind of inspirational.
Very nice. Yeah, interesting. Okay, tell me in one sentence, what are the 3 most important advice you would like to give to younger generation of today through your personal or professional experiences? You know, that is the most required for young generation. In today's world.
Don't waste the time you have given.
That's the first.
Yeah, that's the first one. I mean, it sounds cheesy. The second one would be like, just believe you can do it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Self-belief is the
Yeah.
must thing.
Yeah. And the third, I'd say, no excuses. No excuses. And what I mean by that is, like, we are so used to saying that, you know, I can't do it because of that. I can't do
Yes.
that because of him. Or I
So
can't do
all
that
kind
because
of excuses
Yeah.
which we give, complain to everything.
Yeah. And I say that I can give that advice because I am guilty of all three of those. And I
Oh.
really feel like I wasted. I mean, I hate to say the word wasted because it got me life experiences and
True.
gave me wisdom and that sort of thing. But if I think about now what I love, it's been, you know, I'm getting up there, and I've only now really sort of discovered what I am completely passionate about and what I really want to do. And,
Yeah.
and so, you know, there was a lot of bouncing around, but there was so much of my life was just about, you know, just pain and like, just, you know, like, I can't do it and that sort of thing. So I mean, all those things I would say, it was like, if you're young, just like, there is no, I hate to sound like some sort of Tony Robbins seminar, but, you know, I really feel like, you know, I wish I had known back then that there is, you know, there's no limitations except the ones that you put on yourself, right? I mean,
True, yeah.
it may not look the way you think it's going to, but yeah, but it's like, it's going to turn out how it's supposed to turn out, as long as you
Actually,
believe.
yeah.
And, you know, I mean, yeah, so I mean, those are the three things that I was guilty of myself. And if I can look back and now and just go, oh man, if at 25 I had realized what I know now.
Yeah.
And it sounds, and here's the other thing too, is like, I used to watch, you know, people my age go, you know, don't do this, if only know them. It's like, shut up, old man. You know, but now it's, I hate to say it, it's true, man. So like, yeah, there are no limitations except what you put in yourself, and you are responsible for getting yourself
yes, exactly,
to where you need to be, you and you alone.
Yeah.
I really, that is one of the most important things. And we
so
are
take up the responsibility of your own decisions and your own behavior. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's another thing too, I is a big theme in a lot of my projects now that I've gotten to that point where I can actually recognize that, is the power of choice.
Yeah.
You know, that you have the choice to make what your life is going to be and how you approach it. And I'm just really realizing now that, you know, you set the tone for how you want to. If you see the world as this negative thing that's going to beat you down every single day, then that is going to be your reality. And if you know, but you have to force yourself. You have to force yourself to get past all that crap.
That's
and
true.
it's tough because, you know, we are programmed to be in fear and, you know, all the time and stuff. And so just, yeah.
Very true.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get into the realm of, you know, self-help guru, but there's a lot of truths, and it's not just, you know, it's not just a self-help. These are truths that have been around since the beginning of time.
Of the time.
Yeah, and in every continent in the world. And, you know, one of the greatest things now that I'm at that place is I've really been able to look to my indigenous teachings, my indigenous, you know, spirituality, and you know, and it's really quite simple, and it's about balance, right? You know, that's kind of what our indigenous teachings really break down to. And I'm just finding now that, yeah, like, it's okay to feel angry, but, you know, you also got to balance it out with the sad, or, you know,
true.
You can be scared, but then, you know, have courage as well too, you know. So that's kind of, it's really quite, I'm finding the older I get that life is a lot more simple than I thought it was.
I know, it's not that much complicated,
It's
which
real
we
sim-
make, yeah.
Yeah, and you don't, and that's the thing, is like, you spend so much of your youth stressing out and freaking out and thinking that, you know, everything's going to be awful, and, you know, and like, oh, what am I going to do when I'm 22? It's like, oh, I just turned 21 and I'm not a billionaire now, you know, and it's like, but that's the thing, they always say, you know, youth is wasted on the young, and I definitely was that, because I was in constant turmoil growing up and always wondering. And I just realized now, looking back, you know, that I'm at this age, it's like, oh man, if I just been nicer to myself and just, you know, been like a lot more supportive of myself and just believed in myself a lot more, and I would have had a lot more fun, I think. You know?
Very true, yes.
Yeah, and so, like I said, the older I get, the more simple I realize that life is. Yeah.
Simplicity is more powerful, actually.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, great. So to sum up, the last question.
Yeah.
During your life, till date, do you regret any decision? Something like that, you made up any wrong decision related to your personal life, your professional life, or you should have done that, you should have done that. Only one thing which you really think that, okay, I should have done that.
Yeah, that's a very good question, and it's something I've been thinking about for a lot. I actually don't have any regrets. I have a lot of things I wish I'd done differently.
Oh, yes?
But like I just said, points of view or the way I live my life or the stuff chilled out. But as far as, I've done a lot of like crazy things, and I've done a lot of stuff, and you can read them, you can watch them all in my play, Tales of an Urban Indie,
Yes.
and like I went down a lot of really sort of negative paths in my life.
Oh, okay.
But the fact that I'm still alive and I'm still relatively healthy despite that, I'm very grateful for that.
Right.
So I don't really have those sort of like big monumental moments that really sort of destroyed my life or that sort of thing. So I can look back at those negative experiences now, and because I'm able to learn from them now, I kind of don't regret them anymore. I used to.
All right.
I used to be very tortured of the past things I do, but I've now been able to get to the place where I can sort of look at them and learn from them and hopefully never do them again.
Yes.
But now I look at them as sort of nuggets of wisdom that I've developed.
Yes.
I mean, like I'm kind of at that place where like, yeah, my life didn't turn out kind of the way I thought it was going to when I was like 21, but it's pretty good.
Pretty good.
Yeah, and yeah.
No complaints. It's good.
It's good.
Yeah, good.
It's good. It could have gone way off the tracks. But,
of course, that's so
now
true.
I'm here. We got Pringles here. Life's
Wow.
good. Yeah.
One of your favorite snacks.
Yeah,
of
one of my
course.
favorite snacks, as we were saying before. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much, Darrell,
Thank
for
you.
coming on the show.
Thank
And
you.
I'm so grateful. I'm super grateful having you on this show, and absolutely incredible stories from your life, for your personal and professional experiences. I'm sure people are going to learn so much from you, and they're all going to show and they're all going to see your all upcoming projects which are coming, and we are going to put everything in our description.
Great.
So thank you,
Wonderful.
Darrell.
Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Same here.